Today we're going to talk about your relationship
with food.
So today we have a master trainer on. She's an expert in clinical psychology and my own trainer, Amelia.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here.
Yes, I've been wanting to have you on for a while because Amelia's been training me for about a year now, right?
Yep.
And I love going to you because we don't just talk about like losing weight or gaining muscle. We talk about getting stronger and the relationship I have with food and fitness. And I feel like a lot of vegans in this like kind of cyberspace world, this social media machine, have the internet. They have like either really struggle with food, and we get messages all the time with how we treat food, how we use it to nourish our body, to punish, all kinds of things. And I feel like that's something that people also fall off of being vegan from, is that they start to develop an unhealthy attitude towards that. Yeah. So I know you're an expert on this. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your training?
You know a little bit about it, but I'll
I know
tell
about
you
it.
about it.
Yeah.
I started actually as a yoga teacher originally, and I really loved it, but I just wanted to have more one-on-one contact with people. And so I started training in New York about 8 years ago. And through that process, I've just worked with so many different people, and I became really fascinated. But why are these patterns emerging in terms of people being maybe fit, but not necessarily happy, and vice versa? I think we all are caught up that like what you see on the outside somehow represents what's going on the inside.
Yeah. Right.
And that's just not always true. So I went back to school and I got my master's in clinical psychology because I just really want to know more. And the degree that I got actually focused a lot on relationships. And so what I realized is we're all just having a series of relationships in our life, like with our spouses, with our friends, with our dogs, with our clothing.
Especially with our dog.
Especially with Sprout. So yeah, it's just a series of relationships. And so NISHA and I have been talking about that a lot. It's just what people's relationship to food is. And you know, it can happen in all types of diets, right? So like vegan is a diet, that's like a way of eating. So we just thought it was really interesting to talk about that.
And I think a lot of people think either you have an eating disorder or you don't. And I think there's a lot of gray area and I seemingly look very healthy and feel very healthy, but sometimes I'll forget to eat. Or I'll not want to eat because it'll make me sleepy, and I need to like change my perspective on that, and you've helped me a lot with that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe you guys can talk a little bit about your relationships with food, and hopefully it'll help some people.
So I kind of went through and kind of looked at all of the knowledge that I know about people and the patterns that I've seen, and I saw 3 major emerging styles of eating, and the goal would be that you have a little bit of all 3. When any person shifts more in one direction, that's where things can start to get a little dysfunctional. So it's like something that can change at any time as long as you're conscious of what you're doing. The first one I call punishment or withholding. That could be like somebody is punishing themselves because they're bad or they're not worthy, or they just forget to eat. But either way, you're withholding nourishment from yourself, you're withholding self-love and actually nutrients that your body needs. Yeah, that's you sometimes.
Yeah, because I was noticing around 2 p.m., I was like, I'm so tired. And the tendency, I always think like, oh, if I eat, I'm gonna get too tired to go work at my other job. And so I was like eating tiny meals.
That is so interesting.
Right? And so I was eating tiny meals, and I'm never intentionally thinking, I can't eat that because I ate something else. Like I never think like that, but I'm just like, oh, I need to space out so I have enough energy. And I realized I was just not eating correctly in order to not make myself
To make
sleepy.
yourself have sustained energy.
Yeah.
It's also, I think it sounds really familiar whenever it's been a holiday, or if you've, kind of overdone it at a weekend or something and you've had all the junk food, then that Monday, you're like, oh, I'm gonna start over, I'm gonna start fresh, and you eat like tiny little portions to make up for it. It sounds like that would be in that category.
Exactly, because you're like withholding, and so your body, while there are moments in time where like fasting or having less food is okay, at the same time it is a conscious withholding. And then the second one is fuel, when you're using food as fuel. And in the fitness world, a lot of people talk about this being like, oh yeah, just food should be fuel, but at the same time it's not really how I orient, because I think that food is about connection and community and self-love and like pleasure, so if you're in that category where like, I'm just gonna eat food that's good for me and have no other relationship with it, you're really missing out on a huge portion of the experience. And then the third one is a reward, which again, when you use it, sometimes it's good, but if you're rewarding yourself emotionally with food all the time and you're not actually using other ways to take care of yourself, it becomes too much. And so like, if you're the type of person that feels like nothing else gives you pleasure except for food, that's when you want to be in that category and
starting.
That's a
slippery slope too.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's
great.
such a slippery. I used to have an eating disorder, and it was like it's such a slippery slope to do that because you put so much emphasis on this treat reward that you're going to get, and ultimately it's going to not be enough at some point because it's really not even about the food kind of sometimes. So it's like you don't really get enough satiation from that reward, so then it can be like you need more and you need more, and then you start to obsess, and that can be really intense sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. And a lot of people have like a combination of two where they're like punishing and rewarding, right? So that's one of the really most common things that come up I see for people. It's like you overindulge, you over reward with food, and then you punish yourself for it. And that's technically called the dieter's cycle. I was actually just having this conversation with someone right before I came here.
Oh, wow.
We were talking about like in food, if you cut off too many limbs, what can happen is that like you can't walk around. So I was thinking about it from the vegan perspective, like you already have a couple limbs that you're taking off, right?
Yeah.
You're like, we're not gonna eat meat, we're not gonna eat animal products. And so I think it's really natural for people to be like, well, then I can have all these other things that I want to have because my limbs are already cut off.
Yeah, we talk about a lot of people go vegan and eat a lot of junk food because they're like, oh, it's vegan. Like, I can't have meat, dairy, and eggs, so I'm gonna like eat whatever.
Overcompensate with like the sweets and the junk food.
Yeah, and be like, oh, vegan food is fun, but that can get a little like, it's not really good for your health to do that all the time, and it's not a really good mentality to think about food just being like your only source of happiness and pleasure.
And that's when a lot of people, I feel like, they go to a vegan diet, they immediately start rewarding themselves with all these like vegan junk food things, and then they start to feel bad and they feel worse than before they ate vegan. It's because they're not taking into account that you need to be adding more fruits and vegetables, adding more sources of protein, and like you still have to take care of yourself and eat good stuff.
Yeah. And I think social media makes it really confusing for people too, because there's the hashtag treat yourself, but then there's the hashtag self-love and self-care and body positivity, and then also these vegan junk food things are often very glamorized and they're the cool. It's like, oh, you want the coolest vegan chicken sandwich with the, that awesome close-up of the sauce. No one's doing that with like broccoli.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But then there's the flip side of like, I get most of my messages about bad relationships with food are actually from the withholding and the like purity of food. And so like, because I think a lot of people on Instagram especially, they post these like beautiful pictures of plants. And they never show them like treating themselves. Like, it's like we all try to show junk food and our healthy food at the same time. So if someone's watching this right now and they're thinking, okay, how do I figure out which two I'm really focused on? Is it too much? And then how do you find a balance? Like, how do you know when you have a problem?
That's a really good question. So I did create a quiz, but I was saying it's embedded in my program, so I need to pull it out. So I'll get that to you so you can give it to your viewers.
Okay, perfect. We'll link it down below.
Yeah, taking a quiz or something is just to give you a little self-awareness. I think for the most part, if you think into yourself, it changes, right? It's not like you're a solid creature that's just this one way. It might be shifting. Like, you might be someone who, when stress hits, usually that's the trigger. So I would be like conscious of stress. It's like, where is this stress coming from, and what do you do when you're stress triggered? Some people like go straight into the reward, where they're like stress eaters.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you about stress eating.
Exactly.
That sounded like reward.
Exactly, and that's because it's like you're nourishing yourself. Like, you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, and so
it feels good to like eat something.
Exactly. And then some people are withholders, where myself personally, if I'm really stressed, it's very hard for me to eat because it makes me feel really sick to my stomach. So either way, it's the idea is like you're nourishing yourself, you're actually parenting yourself. So it's almost like reparenting, being like, okay, Amelia, like, it's time to eat food. And
I love that you said that. I say that all the time.
Right? Like, just being gentle with yourself and being like, okay, it's time to eat. Like, this is the time of day that you eat. So I think
we did that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I tend to get very nauseous. Like, even the girls know. If we have a lot of stuff to film, I have to eat little meals throughout our filming days. Like, they're 8 hours long. They're crazy. But I have to remind myself. And when I was working with Amelia, I was eating 2 huge meals a day, and they're like huge. I was definitely like not losing weight or anything, so it wasn't physically manifesting, but like emotionally I wasn't getting the nutrition throughout the day. So I set a timer on my phone, or an alarm, and I was like, every day at this time I'm gonna eat a specific well-balanced meal. And so how would you compensate for that with someone who likes to indulge?
Honestly, I think a lot of the time people who indulge actually are withholding, and that's how they get to the indulgent stage. Like that's how you get to the reward stage. Because most people are like, breakfast, they're like, I'm gonna kill it today. I'm gonna eat perfect. Because you're like fresh and your discipline muscle is high and you're motivated. And so you're like eating like a princess, but too much, right? You're like too restrictive, like eating like somebody you see on Instagram. Like you're like, I think this is how a fitness person would eat or whatever. In your mind, you make up a story like they're only eating lettuce or whatever your story is. And then as the day progresses, like the day weighs you down. All the stress weighs you down. And so then you're like calorically depleted, nutrient depleted, maybe some sugar spikes in there because you have coffee or a little sweet or something. And then you're actually starving. And so you're like, discipline's gone and you're stressed out from the whole day. You didn't have enough food and then you stuff yourself. So it's the same rule, which is like if you're eating on a schedule, whether you want to or not, what happens is your body starts to know, okay, I'm going to get nutrients here, I'm going to get nutrients here. And then you're not going to indulge if you've been fed. Like your body, like you might have some, but it's like, it's not as exciting.
Yeah, you keep the fire fed.
Yeah,
exactly.
When people have cravings, especially for sweets, I think a lot of times it's because they deny themselves throughout the day. Because when you're really well nourished and you're eating well balanced and you have enough calories, you might think something looks good and you might treat yourself, but you're not gonna like have that crazy binge, I think.
I was gonna say that I feel like I fall more in the third category of reward. And what you were saying about that rings so true, because I just recently kind of realized this. If I plan my meals and I know when I'm gonna eat them, like I know I'm gonna have lunch at this time and it's gonna be something mostly like vegetables and like very hearty and like a lot of food, but like good food.
Like protein, carbs,
like all things. Then I don't find that I'm craving the bad food at the end of the day. But if I'm like, oh, I just need to eat a salad because I didn't eat well this weekend, and I eat something that like my body actually doesn't really want, then by the end of the day I'm like, I want nachos. Like I'm like starving, and that's when I make the bad decisions to like eat like a burger, or a vegan burger, or like nachos, or like whatever, because I've but I wouldn't have thought of it that way. I wouldn't have thought, I'm like, oh, I'm totally a rewarder, but I am withholding in a certain way.
That's so
and then rewarding myself because I withheld.
There's an evolutionary like built-in pleasure principle where like if you're starving yourself, your body is literally sending you signals to go for the most for the nachos, the most calorically dense, because it's like, feed me, you know, because you're starving it. That's how we would survive in the wild. We would like, you know, or not, I mean,
in the wild.
I'm like
Back in the wild. Nicole's like, in Florida.
But I mean, like the evolutionary response to like being a scavenger and not necessarily always having a food source. It was always like you wanted the most calories, most bang for your buck.
Absolutely. That really makes me think of this really clear way to differentiate. First, it's about listening to your body and not necessarily listening to what other people are telling you is good for you. I think that's a huge difference, is like kind of turning down the volume of the external world and turning up the volume of yourself. And so there's hunger, right? And there's appetite. So hunger is exactly what you were just saying, which is like your body's hunger for nutrients, your body's hunger for protein, your body's hungry for fat, for water, whatever it is. The appetite is what you learn, right? Like you've never been hungry for nachos, but goddammit, they're good.
You got an appetite.
But you have an appetite for them because you've like learned it so many times. And so it's really cool if you can start to decipher like, okay, I'm craving sweets. My body actually needs carbohydrates. And that's what you and I talked about, because I was like, well, just have fruit. Because you were like, oh, maybe I don't want to have fruit then. And I was like, well, just have the fruit.
Because like for me, I'm not like Nicole. Going for a sweet little slice of fruit, I'm like, I don't want it. I want a burger. I want something cheesy. I want something oily and like fatty. But I was like, oh, maybe I actually do need sugar. And it was pretty life changing. Ate some berries. I just grew and blossomed.
But no, sometimes I want a burger, but if I need energy, something like fruit to me seems like really like hydrating and like sugary and juicy.
Exactly. And maybe you need the burger. You know, I also think that's the thing too. It's like, so food is like the first form of love you get from your mom. It's like so nourishing, it's so loving. So sometimes you do have to indulge in your childhood kind of familial self-care tactics, as long as you're doing it in a way that's like not a withhold to reward. It's more like, you know what, today I just really hashtag I'm gonna treat myself, and you know what makes me feel really good? Like this meal that, you know, maybe you have to modify it from your childhood to make it vegan.
Exactly.
Or maybe you don't, maybe it already is actually pretty vegan, and then...
But allow yourself to do that.
Exactly, but do it intentionally.
Exactly.
Not like unconsciously where you're kind of like shutting your brain off and then like gorging.
Yeah.
I
Right?
love that because we always talk about, because we're so different.
Okay,
the way we
yeah.
grew up, the way we eat is so, we even talk about it, and it's like everything we do is so personalized. Like I eat a lot of lentils and legumes and beans and proteins, spicy, and you're more like oatmeal, sweet stuff. You eat a lot of more like all American food, and just like me trying to be like Hannah isn't going to make me happy and fulfilled and feel comforted, because it's not that like childhood place,
Yeah.
But when we treat ourselves like that, and I feel like people put so much pressure on like, you shouldn't eat this, don't eat soy, don't eat this.
Yeah.
It's like, listen to your
To what
like,
feels good.
what's inside.
Yeah, I love that you said that about like turning off the external and turning on the internal, because there's so much information out there,
Yeah.
especially with social media now. It's like there's so many people telling you this is good for you, this is bad for you, this is good for you, this is bad for you, and it's exhausting, it's overwhelming, and it's a lot of it is fear mongering too. And then you start to get afraid of certain foods, like
Totally.
like I really have tried to say, oh, what's my body asking for? Because like certain things, like as stupid as avocados, I thought like you couldn't have more than one avocado in a day because like everyone's like, it's so high in fat, you're gonna die. But then like I wake up, you're gonna die. But I wake up in the morning and avocado on toast sounds so good to me, and I eat it and I feel good.
Yeah.
And that's my body's way of saying, I want a little fat, I want a little carb, like I want, like this is what I want.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to tell myself it's bad for some reason and just listening to myself, I feel better.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
This reminds me of a podcast episode. I'll link it down below. It's from Deliciously Ella, and they talked about intuitive eating. And I'm sure you get a lot of questions about what that actually is and the fear around that, because we have these bad foods. And they were saying basically that people say you should, listen to what you want, what your body is telling you. And there's so much fear. People think, well, if I listen to what my body wants, it's gonna want to eat burgers and French fries all day.
That's kind of how I am though.
But they were saying that isn't like, that might be in the beginning because it's like a honeymoon period maybe, but then eventually you like
I'm still in the honeymoon.
You wouldn't want burgers every day.
you wouldn't want it every
Get
day.
sick of
You
it.
wouldn't feel good.
Exactly. We had I was just talking to Amelia about this because I see her all the time. I was like, I had a burger and tater tots from Monty's, and I'm like, good.
that's right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, okay, great. Like,
That
now
was
I want to
nice.
eat my food again.
Because you ate it
Yeah.
coming from a good, like, healthy place, like you said.
I was like, that was cute.
Yeah.
Let's do something else because I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
But what do you tell people who ask about intuitive eating and who have these fears of food? Like, I'm sure a lot of our viewers are watching and they hear about intuitive eating, but what does that mean?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the biggest step is, one, addressing the paradigm that we live in, which is the United States, and the food is really like bastardized. Most places in the world, people are not afraid of food.
Yeah.
So first it's like, okay, accepting that you are afraid of food and that there is another way of looking at it. And so I like to start with that. And so the other way of looking at it is like, there is no good or bad. Like it's all in the same category. There's the functional foods that are whole foods because they don't have a lot of processed food, like elements in them. And then you have foods that are really processed foods. And so I usually break it down and keep it super simple. And I'm like, eat whole foods, and if you eat whole foods, you'll just know very quickly because your intuition will be really tied in. We've had a long time with whole foods. The processed foods, it's kind of difficult to actually listen to yourself because it's processed in a way with like fats and sugar and salt and everything delicious, so that your taste buds are getting, everything's getting thrown off. And there's so much more to it than just that. Like, they've done research, so when food is really soft, you actually eat more of it because your body is so lazy that it doesn't want to chew that much. And so like companies intentionally make foods soft. They intentionally make them have a certain color, have a certain crunch, because they want you to consume more of it. They want you to be like mentally addicted to it. So there's a whole science behind that.
I do love soft foods, like anything in a bowl or like doughy pizza or something.
Yeah, and it is so much easier to eat more. Like if you think about like an apple or like some
much work.
cruciferous veggies, like that's so much
You're
work.
like,
So much work. I get tired. I do. I'll be like, I'm just tired of eating this now.
Yeah.
So, and like, that's one place that I would go with it. We can talk all day long, but like, how do I actually make this work?
Implement it.
How do I implement it? I think another thing too is just addressing like how you feel emotionally before you eat. So like sitting down and taking like literally 30 seconds, just checking in with your body and checking in with your mind, being like, what's going on right now? And then checking in after you eat. So I think that would be like maybe not worrying so much about what you're eating, but how you're eating. And so like that way, if you slow it down a little bit, you'll probably be able to feel it more. before, I think when it's really fast, you can't actually feel it. So that could be like a very like strategic 30 seconds where you just like turn your like screens down, and then 30 seconds afterwards.
Like pay attention to how,
I
do think I digest food differently if I'm stressed versus if I'm calm.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot of research and science behind that. So your body starts to digest food with your eyes and with your nose. So your enzymes are getting created in your stomach before you even start eating. So when the more time that you have with the food, that's why I like making your own food.
I was about to say, when someone brings out the food, I feel like it's
always,
it's like
food is
instant.
always
slower-
better digest when I eat at home.
Yeah,
Always.
exactly.
And the slower it's made, like when you make it yourself from scratch, it's so easy to digest. And I think it's because it's like you're preparing to eat it the whole time.
That's right.
Yeah, that makes that's such a difference.
Right? So you have that piece, and then on top of that, fight or flight. It's actually fight, flight, or freeze. So what happens is the blood.
The freeze sounds like me.
Yeah, I'm a freezer. I'm like, what do I do?
Paralyzed.
I know, it's okay.
I think I'm
We die.
I love it. Okay, so when that happens, all the blood leaves your core area and goes out to your limbs because you're trying to run away or freeze or fight. And so you don't have any blood, or I mean, you have some blood, but you don't have a lot of blood in your gut. And so when we're under the normal levels of stress as humans who are running away from tigers in LA, or wherever, you're in the same process physically. My point is, so then when you go to digest, you don't actually have a lot of blood flow going on in your stomach. So your body's
down.
and your body's not digesting very well. Whereas when you're relaxed with your friends and you're laughing and you're having a good time, your body's like, oh, we're safe. And so it does its normal level of circulation. So like that's why sometimes when you're like, why does it feel like it's like a brick in my stomach? Straightforward. It's hard to do for myself even, so I understand it can be challenging, but it works. I promise. Everyone I've told to do this, it works. So no screens, no driving, no distracted, and I mean you can talk with friends and you can listen to music. So nothing that's like visually stimulating and distracting you. And then just take double the amount of time that you normally take. So if you take 5 minutes, just give yourself 10 minutes, and if you take 30 minutes, give yourself an hour. And just mentally, it's like I know it's like I got to go here and I have to do this and I'm thinking about that, but it's like your task is to eat right now. So just like that would be the mental drill, like, oh, I'm just gonna eat right now. And honestly, when I do it, I have no inflammation in my gut, I have no bloating, I naturally stop eating when I'm full, I'm not like too full. And because we've talked about already being on that time schedule, like my body is expecting the food as well.
Yeah.
So
it's like prepared itself.
Yeah, it's prepared itself. I mean, it seems so basic, but at the same time, in our society these days, it's not really set up for us. Like
It's
you
so go.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
sometimes Nicole and I were talking that we put stuff in our planner and we like forget that you have to eat and pee and like sit down sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do 30 things in a day. Who do I think I am? Like, who gave me the right? Like,
And then you feel so bad because you didn't get everything done, and you're just
Like-
like, oh, I'm a failure.
I'm
I
like,
know.
I only got 6 things done. What
If
am I
only I
doing?
didn't pee, I would have had more time.
Yeah,
Seems like
it's
something
style.
that's really popular right now
Yeah.
is like the fasting, the withholding of carbs,
Yeah.
like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, is that a healthy mindset or?
I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'll say it anyway. I think it really just depends on the person and your personal fingerprint with food.
Right.
So some people that works for them, like they're like working with their system. I personally think it's completely silly, but that's just my personal experience with food for me, because I'm Italian and I'm emotionally attached to food.
Yeah.
And the idea of not eating for 2 days, it's like I have to work.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can't just be like a heathen for 2 days, just like stomping around hungry and angry.
I would feel like
I would be like,
I,
a
can,
sit on
I
the couch.
actually get hangry.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I
hangry,
would
crazy.
be killing people.
This is not appropriate for my mental emotional state. For some people that works. I've seen it. I personally have never put a client on a meal like that before.
Yeah.
I encourage intermittent fasting in the sense that I encourage a large fasting window for between like dinner and breakfast. So I say like 14 hours, but that's like 14 hours of every 24-hour time period.
Yeah.
so you're like asleep for most of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like it just means like you kind of like you just add on a couple of hours on either side, and it helps people who have like really unusual schedules, because then you can always count those 14 hours. I like hear of these things, and I can't say that they don't work for people. I think it encourages the like reward punishment. I think it encourages that, to be honest. So I kind of shy away from it.
Yeah.
Because if anything, I think moving towards balance is just better for all of us.
Yeah.
So that's just like my philosophy. But if it works for someone, like great.
What you were saying about that most people have a balance of punishing and rewarding, it just reminds me so much of growing up, how diet culture was such a big part of my life growing up. Even as early as high school, I can remember you know, you hang out with your girlfriends and you start to kind of have these little discussions where people are saying that they're not eating this because they don't want to gain weight, or they're not eating this. And then especially in college, I think was when it was really like at its peak in my life, where my friends and I would have an event come up and then we would just crash diet. We would do these like liquid diet drinks and like not eat anything, and then we would just overcompensate with the bad food. I think it damaged my relationship with food doing that. And now I think I have a better relationship with food where I really don't restrict very much at all. Yeah. Or at least I try not to. But that's what it kind of reminds me of. Just, it seems like another mask of this kind of, these fad diets.
The society we live in. It's totally a symptom of it. Yeah.
And it's kind of like the diet is eat whole foods. Like people are always like, what's the secret? Or like I have clients who ask, what's the secret? I'm like, it's not a secret. It's not a secret at all. But and then also people come to me, like clients, with really sophisticated questions that, to be honest, you'd have to have a degree in biology to truly understand the breakdown. And I'm like, this is a very complicated answer, one that I don't even think you're going to be interested enough to listen to the whole thing. So I'm going to break it down for you. Drink water and eat whole food.
But people want it to be, I mean, we have smartphones and we have all this technology that makes our life so streamlined and so efficient, and people want their diets to be optimized like that. You know, they want everything in their life to kind of be that way. And I think we forget that we're natural beings. And when you were talking about having those set times to eat for people who do withhold, it reminds me a lot of just thinking of the natural cycles of nature. I think sometimes if you just go outside and you remember that we're part of nature, and you know the sun kind of goes up and goes down at the same time. We have seasons. We have like vegetables grow seasonally, and we are like that. We like having like kind of structure and routine and the consistency. I think consistency is really important with diets. And everyone I've ever talked to who's been in recovery of having, whether it was like a full-on eating disorder or some sort of just, you know, misuse of food, you know, they've always said that consistency is something that helps them a lot. You don't go outside and see squirrels like, or birds or whatever. I mean, maybe squirrels, that was a bad example. But you don't see like animals like restricting themselves when they want food because they want to look a certain way, and we forget that that's just like not a healthy, natural way of being.
I think we forget that we're a part of the world. We're not just living in it. And I know Amelia loves to train people outside, because how many people we have weird jobs, but how many people regularly don't go outside, they don't work outside, they don't see sunshine, they don't see the weather, they don't see greenery, and like we
not what we're meant to be.
We're not these little robots like roaming the earth. We are from the earth, we are a part of it, we are part of this like whole world.
There are cycles.
Exactly.
And you feel good when you're kind of with that cycle.
You know, the natural cycle around the seasons, right, are that like as we come into summer, you know, your appetite, like you naturally kind of want to shed your winter skin, and you might be craving different things, and that's great. And like letting yourself actually like shift the way you're eating with the seasons, I think is actually really powerful. I know people who eat really different each season, and I think that keeps you really connected with it. As opposed to like, these are the things that I eat because these are the good foods. And I never eat the bad foods. They're never allowed. And that's just too much, I think, mental work.
Right. Yeah. I think we make it harder on ourselves when we do that. As you said, the secret really is just eating whole foods that are from the earth. How simple
And we say it all the time too, but like locally in season, I think really helps you naturally do that. Because in the winter time when you're cold, like eating watermelon and mangoes, which are really hydrating and cooling, might not feel very good, but like a big bowl of like a veggie stew with rice or something might feel exactly what you need, versus when it's 100 degrees, you probably don't want to eat that.
Something you were talking about, animals, I think animals like really move through things gracefully, and like children, like they really let go. A lot of the times I have people come in and they'll be like carrying around this like meal, but I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally. They're like, it's like their baby. They're like, I was so bad. I was so bad. I was so bad, Amelia. And I'll be like, all right, let's move on. Like, it's over. It's gone. You've already pooped it out. Like, like move on. Move on. Like, clean the slate and like go on to the next. Like, let's move on to the next story. And so I think we like sometimes really hold on to things, and it's like emotionally, you know, the food's moving through your system. Like, don't worry about it. If you just were to mentally and emotionally clean your slate, I think that's another like how-to mentality thing of just really like, cleaning the slate and be like, cool, if I didn't have any feelings about food, what would I eat right now? Because that frustration, disappointment, all that stuff, because you're beating yourself up so much that it's like you're more likely to do it again, as opposed to like kind of just, okay, like forgive yourself, move on, or like,
Thank you next.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, next.
I would love to talk about the relationship between like food and fitness as well, since you are a trainer, and how important that is to like get your body moving.
Yeah.
I notice when I'm more active, I in turn seem to eat a little healthier as well. Whereas when I'm more just like sitting, vegging out on the couch, like having a Netflix day, then I'm gonna be eating worse. And
Totally.
Yeah.
First and foremost, we haven't really talked too much about using food as fuel, but it's gonna be a segment to go right into what you're saying, which is that a lot of the times the withholding pattern, actually the fuel pattern is like very interwoven. So a lot of people who do have, you know, past eating disorders or, you know, exercise orthorexic kind of tendencies. Orthorexia, yeah, exactly. Is like, it tends to be like, well, this is fuel and these are the exact amount of calories that I need, or these are the exact amount of things.
This has this vitamin and this, and so I have to eat this in this amount.
Exactly, which is like on one level is good because you do want to make sure you're getting in the food, but it's also, if you go too far in that way, you're like losing all the pleasure. Like now you're becoming like a scientist, and it's like, you know, like let's think of like the Parisians, you know what I mean? They're like out and enjoying life and like laughing and having a good time.
And the Italians.
Yeah, exactly. They're not like sitting at home like, I wonder how many calories. Like they just don't care because.
And also in nature, like animals aren't like this piece of this grass has precisely like they're just eating.
Exactly. Having knowledge about fuel and having knowledge, like self-education, is super powerful, because like everything, if you self-educate yourself, then you'll start to understand what's going into your body, and so then you can start to have maybe like a little bit of knowledge that's running, but it's just like a backstory running, not like this ongoing. So
yeah, that's such a good way of putting it.
Okay.
I really like it.
And so then in terms of fitness, there are the basic fitness fundamentals in terms of food, which is that before you're exercising, you want to have something that has carbohydrates and fat in it. That's just helpful if you're doing weight training specifically, because it's going to help you get through the workout, because you're going to get a little boost of carbohydrates, a little boost of glucose. And then after the workout, you want to have protein source. So you can have it in food, or you can have it in a like, you know, epic protein, whatever you want to have it in. So that's kind of the breakdown of like around the exercise. And then in general, when you're exercising, like you're using your body as a machine, and so like you really can feel when you put bad fuel in it.
Yeah.
So I think that's why you eat better naturally without thinking, because your body's like, well, we're about to be worked and I want to have good fuel, because I feel the difference. I've always like exercised in a way because for performance. And so when I'm exercising, it makes me eat healthy.
Yeah.
Because when I eat poorly, I go to exercise, I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like a synergistic that way.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about different things, and one thing I always want to be really clear on, there is a philosophy that I have about eating, which is having breakfast. Like these are the things that the tenets, right? I want you to wake up hungry.
Yeah.
I want you to have breakfast. I want you to have a big lunch in the middle of the day, and then a snack, and then I often tell my clients to just have like a nice like vegan soup for dinner, actually. And so that's actually the framework. If you're in that framework, if you eat a big lunch and treat lunch like everywhere else, where you have like a longer period of time to eat and like maybe a little downtime is okay, you're gonna notice that at dinner time you're not gonna be craving all those foods that you normally would. And then when you go to bed, when you wake up the next morning, you'll feel a lot better. Like you'll feel like, oh, I want to eat. Oh, I want to exercise.
Yeah, for me, I was eating like no lunch and then a huge dinner.
That's right.
And then I'd wake up and I was like, oh, I have to eat, but I like not really hungry. So introducing like a huge, like not huge, like it's not a mukbang, but having like a really hearty lunch, even though like I don't really have time to eat lunch. Like I'm not like sitting at home like, what am I gonna have for lunch, and like sitting over my stove. Like I make it before and I like take it with me in the car. So that was huge for me because I have sustained energy throughout the day. And even though like I might get a little sleepy for a little bit, like I'm not gonna crash at 2. I'm gonna have a snack, and then having something hydrating at dinner, like a soup or something like very
Easy
light.
to digest.
Yeah, and easy to digest. And then the 14, I think I do 12
Yeah.
hours in between.
I do 12 too. Yeah.
Yeah, I wake up hungry. And I used to have so many weird eating things because I work so many weird jobs. And like talking with you and having those schedules, like now it's so second nature to me.
Yeah.
Whereas like sometimes I would wake up at 4 and I'd be like, I'm so hungry. And my boyfriend was like, you're crazy.
Right.
But it was because I was not eating intuitively, like with the day.
Yeah, it makes so much sense because I feel like we're just trained to think that lunch has to be a salad, and then we're not.
And in a
like,
lot of cultures,
fast.
lunch is the biggest meal of the day.
Exactly.
And my mom was just telling me that her grandmother used to make supper, and supper was like around lunchtime, and that was the biggest meal. And then they would have kind of like maybe sandwiches and tea type of thing in the afternoon, and a really light dinner because they had to wake up super early in the morning to like get back. It was like they worked on a farm, so I was thinking of it that way, and I was thinking actually that's probably how I would feel the best too, especially if you're waking up early and going to bed early.
It's just food. And so I think that that's the big thing we were talking about before of just like being in this culture. There's a lot of moralizing of food, and then there's a lot of moralizing of self. Like, I'm a good girl or I'm a bad boy because I ate the good food or I ate the bad food.
Oh my God, yes.
And it's like you're eating your self-worth or like withholding it. And it's a very interesting thing. So I often am telling people, it's like, try to just like the behavior of tracking is the behavior that's like nice.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so if you catch yourself, I mean, because I also track my finances, and tracking food and tracking finances are pretty much the exact same thing. It's a little brutal.
Yeah.
In the moment, you're like, wow. It's like in your
You're like,
face.
honey, what are you doing?
Exactly. It's in your face, but then afterwards, and I always tell people, it's like in your face in that moment, but then after the event, you're like so proud of yourself because you just did the best type of self-care that's possible because you just were self-aware. And so in the moment it can be confronting, but then afterwards this like spike of like, you know, serotonin hits and you're like, but I did something good for myself.
Right.
And I think that if you like keep that in mind and like, you know, do a little tracking, then you can like avoid.
It's shocking.
It is a little shocking.
But
though.
then, okay, it's kind of like when you KonMari your closet.
Oh my God,
you're like,
yes.
You're like, I'm fine. I don't have that much stuff. But if you do it the way she does it, and she takes everything
my
out, and you're
God.
like, I need professional help.
I'm disgusting.
I'm gross. But then if you think, okay, I'm not bad, because
Yeah.
you do that a lot when we train. You're like, you're not bad. You're
Yeah.
just having a hard time.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And then I catch myself saying it, and I've changed that. But it's like when you bring out all your clothes and you're like, I'm a hoarder. Like, I need to go see someone. But the shock makes you never want to do that again.
Yeah.
And it makes you like be like, okay, I'm more aware of what I'm buying. I'm more
Yeah.
aware of what I'm using my finances for or eating.
It also just seems like the way we talk to ourselves is so important, just like
Yeah.
of our overall mental health and how we feel about ourselves. And then when you're sitting down 3 times a day and you're talking to yourself about what you're eating, like, oh, I got the fries with lunch, I'm a bad girl. I should have got the salad.
Exactly.
Like, oh my God, like that's you're
Yeah.
so mean to yourself. Your
So
body
mean.
wanted the fries, eat the fries.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
And there's a placebo effect. So it's like your brain is talking to your body. So it's like, there's not necessarily science behind this, but I feel like it's true. Where it's like, I think that if you tell yourself that it's healthy and you truly believe it, you can make anything healthy. I think that you, like, if you're like, this is bad, and you eat it, then your body's like, this is bad, we hate it.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I like French fries, and I feel like I need French fries.
Yeah, me too.
I personally feel that
good
they're
when
good
I eat
for
them.
me.
Like, I did that a lot. Like I demonized like French fries or
Yes.
pasta, but like my body really likes those things.
Yeah.
Like I really like a bowl of pasta. I really like
Yeah.
French fries, and like I just try to find ways to like also incorporate a lot of vegetables when I eat those
Exactly.
things, and then I feel fine. But it's like, if I don't listen to my body, that's when I end up getting like the chili cheese fries, like the mountain, the nachos. Like,
Yeah.
whereas if I just have the fries and I want them, like
Yep.
I move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
I also like that you're making people aware of the yardstick by which they're measuring their self-worth. Like we're not measuring on like what you ate. Like you're so much more than what you eat. You're so much more than what you look like. You're so much more. I think saying it like that is so important because it makes people realize like, wow, I'm putting a lot of my self-worth and my value on a plate of food.
Yeah.
You know, which it is not. It's a plate of food and it is there for a purpose and it's a blessing to have it and it should be thought of as that and not a measure of how good or valuable I am.
Yeah.
And having fun with it. I think that's another big thing that I talk about with people all the time. It's like things have to be fun. Like they have to be pleasurable for you to do them. So figuring out ways to like bring the joy into it. Okay, we've talked a lot about being intuitive to yourself and to your own like body. Like what does your body need? And I think a lot of that ties into body types as well. And that's why I kind of train from that perspective, and I created a course from that perspective, because it's not the end all be all, you know, it's like knowing your astrology sign. Like,
That's not science.
that's not hard science. So there's 3 major body types. There's an ectomorph, which is someone whose clavicles, which are these bones, are like kind of the same size as your hip bones, tend to have longer limbs and like narrower wrists and ankles. And then there's mesomorph, which I'm a mesomorph, which is like the shoulders tend to be a little bit larger than the hips, and we tend to have shorter limbs. Very annoying for pictures, but whatever. And then the last one is an endomorph, which tends to be someone whose hip girdle is wider than their clavicles, tend to have shorter limbs as well, and tend to have larger bones and ankles. And so each body type has a different type of metabolism, and it kind of uses the fuel in a different way. And so I think it's really valuable for you to know your own body type so that you can genuinely like start, like know where you're starting from.
Yeah.
Because I think it's super frustrating for anybody when it comes to whether it's, you know, fitness or just like life, where you're like, how come I'm not getting the same results as other people? I'm doing the same things, but they're going here and I'm going here, and it just seems not fair. Each body type and each person has like gifts and beauty within them, and it's like perfect. I think the challenge is that pictures and, you know, advertisements have one type of body type that you see over and over again. So any differentiation from that body type feels like you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they're like, that's not how the population works. In the world, people are broken down in all 3 body types in different like combinations.
And different sizes.
And they're all relevant. It has nothing to do with health. Someone who's an ectomorph, who is lean and naturally thin, that does not mean they're healthy.
Yeah.
Someone who's a little bit thicker and bigger bone doesn't mean they're unhealthy. Because, I mean, I'm a trainer in LA. I can't tell you how many skinny models I've trained who are very unhealthy and can't do anything.
Yeah. Me
And they're
in college.
Yeah, exactly.
I was skinny, but I ate like a human trash can.
Yeah, and it's like that was not, they're not related to each other. And so that's a really big piece for me. And then when it relates back to intuition, I think that we talked about it a little bit, whereas I do think that when you start to get to know your own body type and start to build up a relationship with yourself around food and understanding, there is a correlation somewhere in terms of your body type and like your relationship with food.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? There is definitely something going on there. So I created a 9-week program. It's a training program. So it has 9 weeks of 7 days a week of training. Each body type has a different program because we haven't talked about this, but I'll say it really quickly. Different body types build muscle in a different way.
Yeah.
So this is something that's really important. So for these 3 ladies, it's really important for them to do heavy weight training because your body doesn't necessarily build as much muscle. So it's a little bit different for each body type. And then the food, there's actually a meal plan built in that has recipes, it has homemade sauces, it has a grocery list, and there are options that are non-vegan, and then there's a completely vegan option as well. It's very similar, and honestly, I was thinking for people who are vegan, they can actually look up to the other one because you get both, and like pick some other recipes if you want to.
And just veganize that.
And then on top of that, there's each week you get a little psycho-education video, which is just me talking about a lot of the stuff we talked about, like coping skills. Like how does one implement this kind of lifestyle change and keep it?
Yeah.
There is the quiz that lets you know about your relationship with food, which also will be linked below.
Yeah.
There's another quiz that is to figure out what your stress triggers are so that you can start to be aware of them and anticipate them so you're prepared for that. And then on top of that, there's some stretching and there's some warm-up stuff videos.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, what else is in there? Oh, and there's some questions at the end of every single week to be like, how's it going and stuff like that. I kind of took a year of training with me as a client and I condensed it down into 9 weeks.
Yeah, it's not just, what I like about it is not just a workout program, it's like a lot of bang for your buck because it is a year's worth of training.
Yes.
But also it's not just workouts, it's like what you would get working with Amelia in person, like the relationship with food, the science behind it, the talking. So it's really...
Sounds amazing.
It's really thorough. Like,
it took me a lot.
Sorry.
It took a lot for me. And I made it so it's $7 a day for 9 weeks.
Wow,
so that
that's
it's like,
incredible.
it's like a coffee a day.
Yeah,
It's like
literally.
a coffee a day and like a really fancy coffee a day.
I mean, workout classes in LA are like, you can't get, 30 bucks minimum.
I do have it like a lifetime membership, and I'm always updating it, so it's like you just can continue to do it. And all you need is a mat and dumbbells. So one set of dumbbells, and the reason I did that is because you can do it at a gym if you want, but also at the same time, a lot of people that I know work out at home, they work out outside, or they do like at gym and at home, or they're traveling.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not that complicated. You can get the results you need with one set of dumbbells.
That's amazing.
How heavy do they need to be? Because I have 5 pounds and people make fun of me.
First of all, your bag weighs more than 5 pounds. I'm sure it does.
Actually.
You can do 10
really
pounds, no
does.
problem.
You'll be fine. I love a girl's like,
Your bowl
I don't
of
know
oatmeal
yes.
is heavier than that.
I'm like,
And Amelia does train for non-vegans too, so she
Yes.
will have like some inspo that's not vegan on her page. We
Yes.
just have to like preface that because I
Yes.
don't want you to be startled. So
Yes.
yeah, but I love that you do include that because so
Yeah.
many personal trainers are like, oh, don't do that. You're gonna
Totally.
die.
Yeah.
I've loved this conversation. I feel like we
Yeah.
covered so much ground.
Yes.
I really appreciate you being here and taking the time.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. I'm gonna watch this episode like 20 times.
I know.
Whenever I'm feeling down, I'm just gonna watch this episode.
Yeah, I know,
I'm
really.
really proud of
We
it.
should definitely have you back. Like, if you guys have any questions for her
Yes.
about food and relationships, any
Yep.
tips you guys want, definitely comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and so some more people can see it and have healthier relationships with food. And you can check out Amelia's fitness program. We'll link it down below, as well as her Instagram. Check out our individual channels, and check out our Facebook group because it's a fun gaggle of people. And we will see you guys soon in a new video.
Bye.
Bye.